During the pandemic, food delivery apps like Doordash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub absolutely skyrocketed in popularity as people enjoyed the ability to have food delivered right to their front door without having to even get up off their couch. These delivery apps saw unbelievable growth. From 2019 to 2020, Uber Eats' year-over-year revenue more than doubled, and DoorDash's more than tripled. However, as the pandemic continued and eventually subsided, it became clear that the food delivery industry was in a bubble that was primed to burst at any moment. Food delivery apps, which were once seen as a saving grace during the pandemic, are today ripe with problems for all participants. The customer is swamped with excessive fees, the delivery drivers are underpaid, restaurants report that the food delivery apps take too high of a commission from each order, and the delivery apps have insanely high operating costs and struggle with the ultra-competitive food delivery industry, leading to razor-thin margins. It's evident that the market has figured out that food delivery is an extremely undesirable industry to be in post-pandemic, which is illustrated by the fact that one of the largest food delivery apps has been unable to find a buyer for over 2 years now. So what exactly led to the downfall of food delivery apps? Let's find out. If I were to ask you, when were food delivery apps created? You might answer somewhere in the late 2010s, or maybe even during 2020 after the pandemic shut down the majority of in-person dining at restaurants. In reality, the most popular food delivery apps today were created long before then. DoorDash, by far the most popular food delivery app today, with a whopping 67% of the US market share, was founded in 2013. Other popular apps like Uber Eats and Grubhub were founded in 2014 and 2004 respectively. That's right, food delivery apps are technically 2 decades old at this point. Early on in the 2000s and 2010s, as smartphones were soaring in popularity, a bunch of super savvy tech founders who are way smarter than I am realized that food delivery was the future. Here's a clip of the founders of what would eventually be DoorDash pitching their company to a venture capital firm in 2013, explaining their insights into how food delivery would benefit restaurants, delivery drivers, and hungry customers.
The 4 of us came together about 6 months ago to work on software for small business owners. But we didn't have a need at first, so we just went out and talked to all the small business owners we could find. After over 100 interviews, we came across a really interesting problem with small business restaurants in an area like this, Palo Alto.
Yeah, so it turns out restaurants in Palo Alto don't deliver, even though they really want to, but they can't afford it. But their consumers are craving for it, but the places that the consumers love just can't deliver. And we also found out about these delivery drivers who had a ton of spare time, and they all want to earn extra cash during that downtime.
Right, and so that's when we built an initial product, PaloAltoDelivery.com. And how it worked is the customer goes to the website and places an online order that gets automatically sent to the restaurant. And then we, as the dispatchers, with some pretty neat routing and batching algorithms, we're able to send the drivers efficiently to get the orders to the customers at a really fast time.
These founders, along with the founders of other food delivery apps, recognized that food delivery was extremely simple and accessible for almost everyone. If you were an office worker who couldn't leave the office to grab lunch, you could just use a food delivery app to have food delivered without even having to leave your desk. Had a long day at work or a long day running errands all around town? No problem. Just tap a few buttons on your screen and you could have food delivered. No cooking required. These tech founders' bets paid off as the food delivery industry quickly took off, surpassing a valuation of $100 billion by 2019. The pandemic the following year in 2020 caused the industry to explode, and by the end of 2021, the online food delivery industry was worth over $294 billion. However, it was pretty obvious at that point that the industry was at the top of a bubble, as the pandemic was obviously not going to last forever. Sooner rather than later, restaurants would open back up, and people would begin leaving their houses again, which would cause food delivery app usage to begin to fall. And that is exactly what happened. As society slowly returned to normal, food delivery apps began to struggle to stay afloat. In a financial analysis conducted by the Financial Times in 2024, it was reported that over $20 billion combined has been lost by the most popular food delivery apps since going public. But why exactly is the bubble bursting? Well, it's due to the inherent problems with food delivery apps. The most obvious problem with food delivery apps is that they are super expensive. A premium service like this is bound to be expensive due to the multiple parties that need to be compensated for their efforts: the delivery driver, the restaurant, and the delivery service. Each of these parties needs to make a few bucks off each order processed in order for it to make sense for them financially to participate. This in turn causes the prices for the customer to be extremely high. Additional problems such as the tech companies having high operating costs, as well as the food delivery market now being extremely saturated and competitive, causes the tech companies to pass on their costs to both the customers and the restaurants in the form of various fees. When you order food delivery today, the price that you pay for your food will have multiple fees added on, such as a service fee and a delivery fee, which can cause the price to skyrocket. Let's take a look at an example from the customer perspective of ordering a sandwich from Jersey Mike's off Uber Eats. Right off the bat, the food itself is already $5 more expensive on Uber Eats than it would be if you went in-store to order the food yourself. Uber Eats then adds on their service fee and a delivery fee, then increases the price by over $5. The fees don't end there though, as Uber Eats also adds on the extremely controversial small order fee of $3. Small order fees are used because of the fact that smaller orders don't bring in as much revenue for the company. However, the company will still have to cover the full cost associated with fulfilling the order. Small order fees are used by all of the popular apps, and typically are added onto orders of food under $10 or $15. When it's all said and done, the cost of ordering Jersey Mike's through Uber Eats is almost 3 times more expensive than what you would pay in store. Like I already briefly touched on before, this extra money that customers pay largely goes to the tech companies and not the restaurants. Taking a look at an example from the restaurant side of the equation, a barbecue joint in Chicago called Boxcar BBQ was interviewed by a popular food website for an article about how delivery apps are destroying local restaurants. In the article, the restaurant's owner broke down how much money they made off an average order. For a $30 order of some smoked ribs, sides, and a dessert, the delivery apps immediately take a 15% commission off the top, equating to $4.50 in this scenario. Industry standards for food and labor costs come in around 60%, so that's another $18 taken away from Boxcar BBQ. That leaves just $7.50 of profit left. But Boxcar BBQ still has to pay for occupancy costs, which covers things like rent, utilities, and waste removal. Boxcar BBQ reported that they averaged 20% for their occupancy costs, which equates to $6 in this scenario. That means that the restaurant makes just $1.50 on a $30 order. The owner of Boxcar BBQ went on to note that the delivery app's commission of 15% on each order, which came out to $4.50 in this situation, is questionable, as the delivery app didn't undergo any of the stress, the cooking or preparing of the food, or the physical effort to complete the order. Of course, you can argue that the delivery apps deserve this commission as they have created the opportunity for the restaurant to even be able to participate in online food delivery. However, the real question is what commission percentage is fair for both the delivery apps and the restaurants. The owner went on to say that if the customer tipped their delivery driver, the delivery driver most likely made more money off the order than Boxcar BBQ did. Which brings me to the next problem of food delivery: the insane tipping culture. We all know how out of control tipping has gotten recently. Companies like Domino's Pizza have even started making commercials poking fun at this phenomenon.
Everywhere you go, there's a tip screen.
Great set, bro. Now take a look at this screen real quick. Okay.
And do you, Michael, want to answer one more question?
At a time when tipping can...
A system has emerged in the food delivery industry that essentially forces the customer to tip handsomely on each order. And if they don't, then don't expect your food quickly, Doordash says. This stems from delivery drivers being underpaid, a subject that I will cover shortly. I'm sure that most people wouldn't mind tipping their delivery drivers extremely well. However, the fact that you have to pay all the extra fees that delivery apps add on, like the delivery fee and the service fee, causes people to get cold feet when they have the option to tip, since they've already spent so much money on their order. In fact, a survey from Bankrate reveals that only roughly 50% of food delivery customers tipped on their order in 2023, down from 57% in 2022 and 59% in 2021. This has caused Doordash to test pop-ups in their app that show when a customer is about to place an order with no tip. Orders with no tip might take longer to get delivered. Are you sure you want to continue? The pop-up reads. Lots of people would rather tip after they have received their food, or tip their driver with cash in person when they receive their food. These people are not going to tip before they get their food, which causes their orders to either take an extremely long time to get delivered, or to not even be delivered at all, since a lot of delivery drivers won't take an order with no tip, which, I should add, is something everyone would do. If you're presented with 2 orders, one with no tip and one with a $2 tip, of course you're going to pick the order that nets you an extra $2. This is one of the inherent problems with food delivery that is arguably unsolvable. Customers don't want to tip before they receive their food, but delivery drivers don't want to deliver orders if they haven't received a tip beforehand. The final major problem that food delivery apps present is that the delivery drivers don't make much money. For example, the average Uber Eats driver earns a base fare of $2 to $4 per delivery. As the cost of fuel, insurance, and car maintenance continues to increase, delivery drivers turn to customer tips in order to continue to make enough money to survive. But, as we just went over, the tipping culture is out of control, and a large portion of customers don't tip their drivers anymore. This goes to show how broken the food delivery business is, and how no side is truly winning. The median hourly wage in the US is between $20 and $25, depending on certain factors such as location and race. In a Reddit post where a Doordash driver asked fellow drivers whether they make the median hourly wage, lots of users reported making well below that, $10 to $15 per hour, $12 to $16 per hour, $12 to $15 per hour. One user painted the picture extremely clear, saying that they make $20 to $25 per hour. However, after subtracting expenses like the cost of fuel, the actual profit is around $15 per hour. Workers being underpaid translates to a worse experience for the customer, as the worker has no incentive to go above and beyond, or, in some cases, to even perform their job properly. We see this in the food delivery industry, as delivery drivers do their best to avoid orders with no tip. But it's not always the customer's fault that drivers aren't tipped beforehand. Maybe the customer plans on tipping with cash in person when the food is delivered, or maybe they felt they spent way too much on the fees that the apps charge, and couldn't justify tipping their driver on top of that. So we've gone over how the customer is paying an exorbitant amount of fees to have their food delivered, but neither the restaurant nor the delivery driver is really seeing any of that money. That leaves just the food delivery apps to be the ones rolling in money, right? Well, not exactly. Sure, all of the food delivery apps are raking in tons of revenue. In 2023, Uber Eats brought in $12.1 billion, DoorDash brought in $8.63 billion, and Grubhub brought in $2.1 billion. However, all of these companies are yet to turn a profit. This fact that none of these companies are profitable goes to show you how competitive the food delivery industry has become, and just how razor thin the margins are. This has caused the parent company of Grubhub, Just Eat Takeaway, to attempt to sell the food delivery company only 1 year after acquiring it. However, after over 2 years of talking with potential buyers, there is still no one who wants to buy Grubhub. It seems that the market has realized that there are no winning sides in the food delivery business, and that the bubble has truly begun to burst.